who's been keeping track of my videos would know by now that I prefer to elaborate upon the more obscure pieces of entertainment that I don't think receive as much credit as they deserve. So in pondering what I should talk about next, I decided to devote some time to the memory of what I consider to be an underappreciated classic, The Land Before Time. In all honesty, this film means almost as much to me as the Digimon franchise, which should indicate my overall impression of it. However, for several reasons, I decided not to make this video an extensive review. First, I can review this film for days, and I don't think I would be satisfied with the amount of material covered. Second, there is the matter of the franchise the film spawned, which brings about an interesting topic that makes for an effective deviation from my past topics. To elaborate further, and provide a little history, The Land Before Time's success apparently merited it a sequel, The Great Valley Adventure, and as with many animated sequels, it was released directly to video. But the sequel strayed so far from the original in so many areas, I don't know, it's just astounding, degenerating to the layout of Disney sequels. Sadly, the layout of the second film would become the general tendencies of what would eventually become a film series composed of a dozen sequels, pretty much obscuring the actual image of the original. Thus, instead of a full-out review, this could be considered more of a clarification on what the original is really like. Now, when one first looks at the cover art for the Land Before Time, their first impression is probably, oh, cute animated film about dinosaurs. Now, not to bombard anyone with cliches, but first appearances can be deceiving, as the relatively cheerful movie cover does not do the film justice, even though the cover does tell us it was executive produced by Spielberg and Lucas, and that alone merits it a look. The Land Before Time is a harsh, brutally honest story about loss, faith, unity, and enduring to the end. The actual film begins with a narrative sequence that is absolutely fantastic, possessing the feel and atmosphere of a nature documentary. From this first sequence, most would be surprised at the overall gloomy tone, with scenery that includes swamplands, obscured skies, and dust clouds. And from this point on, it is made clear that this is not your typical animated film. The basic premise is that numerous herds of dinosaurs and other prehistoric reptiles are migrating towards a land known as the Great Valley, a dwelling place of sanctuary from the seemingly dying world. However, the travel is uneasy, as all of the herds distrust each other, so already one can spot the issue of prejudice that is addressed. With only a few offspring remaining, and the constant danger of predators, the herds can only hope to reach their destination with their future secure. Through several events, some of the offspring are separated from their herds, and must band together to reach the Great Valley. While the basic premise is not exactly original, after all, there are many films about a long journey to a paradisical land. The film's treatment of the layout is very intriguing, considering the themes and overall tone. Throughout, there are many instances where the main characters deal with several obstacles concerning survival and unity, something that unique within this type of film. The way that each one reacts to different situations and how they all interact with each other is so interesting that it is actually on a similar level as the character interaction of the Digimon franchise. I won't reveal too much about the characters though, because I think one needs to see the film to get the correct impression. Another element that really makes The Land Before Time stick out amongst animated films is the soundtrack, which I am pleased to say is one of the most powerful I have ever heard. Every single piece complements its respective scene perfectly. Each score, from Sharptooth and the Earthquake to Discovery of the Great Valley, is memorable in its own right. Something that I must admit I noticed even as a kid. As for the closing song, I frankly could not think of a more fitting way for the film to end than with If We Hold On Together, performed by Diana Ross. Sadly though, none of the film's sequels would possess a similarly impacting soundtrack, although the fourth film makes an effort, but we got a while before reaching that point. Just to prove that this movie can easily be taken seriously, I would like to point out that it is chock full of genuinely sad moments, unlike pretty much all of its sequels. The moment that pretty much everyone remembers is the death of Littlefoot's mother, which I would like to point out is a sequence that appeared on the Nostalgia Critics list of top 11 saddest nostalgic moments. That alone should say something. Now, I will admit that as far as I can recall, only 5 films have ever made me cry, and this was one of them. And it is because of this scene that many are quick to call The Land Before Time a modern-day take on Bambi. However, I honestly think this death of a parent was more impacting. I mean, sure, the scene of Bambi wandering aimlessly through a snowy forest, calling for his mother, and clinging to any shred of hope left is a real tearjerker. But Littlefoot's experience appears to be worse. Not only does his mother die saving him, but he actually sees the whole thing happen before his eyes, and he even speaks to her during her last moments, also clinging to false hope, and listening to the last words of wisdom that she has to offer. To top it all off, he realizes that he is now left to reach the Great Valley on his own in a vast, hazardous land. I would be very surprised if anyone saw this and didn't feel even the most infinitesimal bit of sympathy for the film's hero. Even so, there are many moments of genuine levity, which certainly prevents the film from becoming depressing. The last thing I feel I must mention. By now, many of you should be aware that I believe among the more fascinating elements in entertainment are the villains. And The Land Before Time's Sharptooth is one of the greats within his own line. He appears on the cover of the movie, but again, that image doesn't do him justice because I can confidently say that this is one villainous carnivore unlike any other. What makes him so memorable is not his species, but his relentless nature. This creature is genuinely terrifying. For much of the film, he trudges forward either as an ominous presence or an advancing force of nature. This is no mindless giant reptile. He is a deceptively cunning creature, capable of incredible maneuvers, and persistent in achieving his one goal, to catch the protagonists. He's made all the more menacing by the fact that you can't seem to get rid of him. And I don't say that lightly. They try everything to kill this monster, smashing him against a rock, luring him into a forest of thorns, even casting him down a crevice during an earthquake. But nothing works. He's practically invincible, and that's what makes him stand out amongst dinosaur villains. One could even consider him a throwback to the archetype established by the monster Godzilla. But that's a story for another day. So with all of this going for it, I hope that I have given sufficient reason to give this film a consideration. If you enjoy animation, or have already seen this film before, I suggest viewing it again because believe me when I say, its sheer strength as a viewing experience only increases as you age. It's one of the greatest pieces of animation from its time, and if you can get past the lighthearted television program, the myriad of subpar sequels, and the silly alphabet cereal commercials, you just might find something worth your time.